I'm Ariana Grande.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Erivo.
And you're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Visit vpn.fm to discover more.
There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to the Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today we have another amazing guest. He was the Rum Tum Tugger on the U.S. National Tour 5 and started the tour. So welcome, Stan Stanley. Thank you for joining me.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I got introduced by your Mistoffelees, so I always, there's such a connection between those your characters. So I think this is kind of fun to have you on the show.
Yes.
But let's start at the beginning. This is always an interesting question because you're like right around the movie when the movie came out. So it's like that 1998 movie came out. You're going on tour in 2000, 2001-ish.
Yes.
What was your introduction to Cats? Had you been aware prior to the movie, or were you like, what was the first viewing for you?
I had been in love with the music from Cats for probably 15, 20 years prior to me auditioning for the show. The community theater group that I grew up in would take a trip, or the adults would take a trip to New York every year and see the new shows. So 82, 83, 84, somewhere, when the show was just getting started, the group had gone and came back with rave reviews of this, very unique, sung through, danced through show. And they brought me as a little souvenir, because of course I was at home, but the vocal selections from Cats. And so I played the piano from a young age, and I would sit and play through that ad nauseum, I'm sure, and was particularly obsessed with the song Up, Up, Up to the Heaviside Layer for some reason. But so before I saw the show, I was very drawn to and intrigued by the music. And then in high school, my high school marching band, I will age myself, but around 1990, 91, took a trip to New York. And that was the first time that I saw the, still running original production of Cats in the Winter Garden. And so, it really piqued my interest. It had always piqued my interest, but then I finally got to see it live. And my one funny memory that I always think about is, of course, I was looking as a singer. I was primarily a singer. When is Grisabella going to belt that high E flat? I'm ready for it. And then the intermission came after Little Memory, what I now know was Little Memory. And I thought, where's that high E flat? What are we even doing here? Then I, of course, sat through intermission and was able to be very pleased by the end of the show with big memory.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because the first time I saw it too, Memory was the only song I knew of the show going into it, and they kind of tease you with it, with Little Memory, and I'm like, I remember that song being a lot more powerful, and had the same kind of reaction. Exactly. And I was like, oh no, wait, I've seen enough theater at that point to be like, wait, this can't be it. Like, this has got to be a tease. But yeah, they do kind of hit you with it. So so you're in high school at that moment, but you're introduced. You weren't invited to the adult trip, right? Like,
no, I wasn't.
Kids don't get to come. Okay.
No, adults only.
So you got, and this is what is pre-YouTube, pre all this stuff. You're bringing back a cassette tape with the vocal selections, and
I don't even remember that. I guess probably so. It would have been a cassette tape. I just remember that I had the piano book, Easy
book.
Piano, the vocal selections from. And so I sat down at the piano and played. And of course, that's only, probably a quarter or a third of the music that's actually in the show was included in that little book that I was given.
Yeah.
But I sure did learn those songs.
That's awesome. So you knew all the music going in, and then you finally get to see it in high school.
Yes.
And then when do you audition for this? Like, how did that come up?
So I moved to New York City in March of 2001. Just, now looking at it just prior to September 11th. And I just started hitting the pavement and going to all the auditions that I could. And I had gotten hooked up with a really good vocal coach whose name is Stan Tucker. Randomly, he's also from Tennessee. But he had a rich history with a lot of the Andrew Lloyd Webber shows, I think with Cats, I think maybe Starlight Express even, and for sure a long history with a Phantom of the Opera. And so I was taking voice lessons and audition coaching with him. And he would always check up on, what auditions are you going to this week? What do you have going on tomorrow? And I said, well, they're doing a new Cats tour, and I would love to be in the show, but I'm not that strong of a dancer. And he had me sing some Elvis Presley music for him, and said, I'm going to call who I now know is Kristen Blodgett and tell her you're coming. And I walked into the audition for the first time, and that's how that all got rolling.
So did he pick Elvis because he knew you were going to send you in as Tugger?
Yes, he thought that was the role, that if any in the show that I would be suited for. I had studied voice in college and was kind of a legit musical theater singer. My voice tended to work well with like rock opera, The Who's Tommy, Jesus Christ Superstar were shows I had done previously. And so I didn't really at that point realize that there was a character in Cats for me, but he recognized that and sent me to the audition. And
so was Tugger in your book growing up as a kid?
No.
So you're not familiar,
if it was,
right?
I wasn't really drawn to it, strangely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're less familiar. You're walking into this audition. Did you give like it obviously fits your vocal range and it fits kind of the singing piece that you can do?
Yes.
How much of it was was that your personality? Like, did you have to kind of dive into that aspect of this?
Well, it's funny. It's which came first, I'm not sure. I think of now as my personality. I think I was really typecast into the role. But at the time, that's really not how I considered myself. And, after playing 700 performances, because I did the show for 2 years, after that, I completely thought, oh, that's definitely my cat. I mean, he's a little mischievous. He's a little, crazy, likes a good party. And so, that's how that came about.
Were you Tugger before, or did you become Tugger throughout the 2 years?
Or did I become Tugger?
Yeah. That's fun. So, okay. So when you're in the audition process, how much of this, as someone who's not ever been in an audition room, even in high school or anything else, just never have done this. How much of this are you given of all right, I need you to be able to make sure you can just dance a little bit because you got to dance, you got to do some of this part. Here's what I need you to sing, but also here's the personality you're going to have to play. Like, what are you told in that specific space?
Well, I have learned that the audition process for has been very different for a lot of different people, even with the cast that I started with, I think. But for me, I remember us learning the choreography to the very last minute or two of the opening number, and then after learning that and getting that a little bit in our bodies, they really encourage us to let ourselves kind of have a lot of fun with it and be, that was probably where I was introduced to the term felinity, was by Richard Stafford in that original audition. And then from there, I went to several callbacks, and I don't really remember during the audition process being coached on acting like Tugger would, but they did always have me sing an Elvis Presley song.
Interesting. Okay.
So, and that involved moving of the hips, I guess, and kind of like the general demeanor or that Tugger would bring, to the show. And it wasn't until we really started the rehearsal process that they started kind of explaining more of the character arc and, the background that you've learned so much about. I've learned a lot, honestly, listening to some of your podcast episodes.
Yeah, it is a little bit of like a game of telephone at this point with the Cats lore. So, okay, so now you get cast, and
yes.
This is the beginning of this tour. This tour went for like 10 plus years, I think.
Right.
So this is the first group. What did you remember about that? Like, first around the horn of like, here's the story, here's this. And I really want to know, like, what, as someone who saw it, someone who grew up with the music, what was the moment where you're like, wait a second, this is about what? Like, this is my character here. Like, what was those aha moments?
Honestly, I think, I don't know a funny memory, jumping ahead 2.5 years after I left the show. One of my best friends on tour was our hair and makeup supervisor, and he continued with the show after I left. And they were in, and I had moved back to New York, and I went to see David Hansen with the cast somewhere in Connecticut. Rode the train up, and Richard Stafford and Miss Blodgett, Kristen Blodgett, were in the audience. And I remember going over to them and saying, "You don't really realize you're such a part of such a classic, phenomenon of a show until after you are not a part of it anymore."
Yeah,
because that was the first time that I had seen. It was the replacement cast, the guy that replaced me as Tugger, and I remember that being very impactful. About wow, I was a part of this huge juggernaut of a show. But then, so backtracking then another 2 years when we started rehearsals, I was very overwhelmed by this role in particular, because one, I just didn't think that I was quite a good enough dancer. And then, as you know, 3 years prior, the VHS of the taping of the Cats Superstars basically was what that cast was, in my opinion. And their Tugger danced the whole ball and, did all this stuff. It was just tremendous. And I knew that I had the vocal chops for it. I was not intimidated by that at all. But I thought, am I going to be able to, McCree O'Kelly, this dancer from Atlanta Ballet, and Shiloh, who had done the show in Germany, our two lead dancers, I was blown away by the talent. And I thought, am I going to be able to live up to that? So I didn't really get into the headspace of, what the character Tugger was until probably a month or two into the run, because I was so, concerned about the logistics of being here and doing this and singing this and making sure my riffs were right. And then finally, once it, sinks in, I've heard you talk about the Atlantic City run was a abbreviated show. And I remember I think it was Raleigh, North Carolina, wherever we started the full version of the show. And then a couple of weeks after that, I remember sinking in and talking to some castmates about, that was the first time I had been comfortable enough to talking about our different character, relationships and who dated who and who, whose kitty belonged to who and things like that.
That's so interesting because it is I always forget, and it's a show that has such a polarizing piece, because I've heard the reverse of what you're saying. You're saying hey, can I do the dance numbers? I know I can do the singing. I've heard the singer or the dancers who are I know I can do the dance numbers, but do I have the vocal chops to do some of this and to be in there? And it's kind of a different piece where that's a show that's there's a lot of shows where you could just go out and sing and then walk off stage and vice versa. And this show, you don't get that luxury.
No.
So I hadn't even really thought about the idea of what you're saying, which is I'm ignoring the story basically until I can make sure I hit my marks, and I'm not going to kick somebody in a spin or, all these other things that you got to solve doing this show for the first time. So that's super interesting. So, okay. So now I want you to fast forward though to you start having those conversations.
Right.
What are you talking about? What are the things that are coming up from Tugger's standpoint? And when you're on the bus and chatting through those.
Right. Well, and I've heard, you discuss on prior episodes, is it the Cats, is your character leading these relationships, or is the actor, the friendships that you are making on tour, which is leading the relationships? And I'll have to say, as it has turned out, some of my better friends on the road, were the character were the actors that my character as Tugger interacts with more on stage. Obviously, Tugger and Grisabella have some type of past. And both of the Grisabellas that I work with, Gretchen Goldsworthy and Dee Rossioli, were two of my best girlfriends on the tour. The relationship between Tugger and Mistoffelees, and from the practical point of view, I started thinking, okay, well, we obviously have a great respect for him because I sing his number and, the Mr. Mistoffelees number. But then is that, I'm able to master that and know that I'm doing a good job of singing and presenting his big dance number. And then I was able to ease into, okay, well, why is Tugger singing this? Why of all the people, Tugger is, so aloof and so here and there, and you can't peg him down. why is he so, enamored, as it were, with Mistoffelees? So that I also, as a singing actor, was always had tremendous respect for the best dancers, and so I was definitely drawn to the bigger dance roles, Mistoffelees, obviously, and then also Victoria, and some of the other key dancers, Pounceville, Tugger. My Tugger always liked watching Pounceville dance. Just because I think it was something that he knew that he couldn't do, they were good at. Maybe he's more of the star of the show, but he likes throwing a little attention to the little kitten dancers.
Yeah. One thing I think that's interesting that you're saying, and I've thought a little bit about, and I don't know the answer to it, but it seems like more recently, I think there's a little bit more flexibility in casting. Like they're just in general, like, okay, maybe this person can be a little bit shorter, or this person can be there, and they don't have to necessarily match the personality. Whereas I think when you were doing it, they were a lot more of like, all right, I think this person embodies Tugger more, or embodies Mistoffelees more, or embodies the character more. And then when you think about it from that lens, then you should be better friends with the ones that they expect you to be better friends with, because that would be the way like the characters are kind of built around. Right. And there's also a little bit of the, like, we're recording this on a Sunday. I was watching football before we started. Mm-hmm. The offense is going to be more friends with the offense, and the defense is more friends with the defense, because you spend more time together. So if you're next to that person on stage, you're probably spending more time with them in general.
Yes. Yes.
But it's so fascinating to me though, because the fans like look at this of like, oh, wait a second, you shouldn't, like, those two shouldn't be pawing each other, and it could just be like, you know what, you had a great conversation on the bus before, and all of a sudden it's like, no, you're gonna have some fun on stage.
Yes. And that's I think just the logistics of rehearsal kind of dictated who I was friends with, at least at first. Now, once you get on the road and you're all traveling together every week, then you get to know everyone else. But I look at it as they cast. It's a troupe of dancers and 5 singers with Deuteronomy, Gus, Tugger, Grisabella, and, well, I guess Jenny Anydots is a big singer. In our company, she covered Grisabella, but also Jelly Lorum. So those were cats that primarily were hired from the singer pool, and those I had more rehearsal time with them at first. So I was naturally, and also I don't know if anyone has introduced this, but on our tour, the cats are numbered. I was number 5, I believe, or 6.
I don't think I knew that.
Oh, you've not? Yeah. I think it's Deuteronomy is 1, Grisabella is 2, then it's Mistoffelees, Gus, and Tugger. So we always shared the dressing room. It was not randomized dressing rooms, at least on our tour, and that was for 2 years. So yeah, we were always next to the same people, and that's just who I became friends with first.
How did the numbers, like, what do the numbers mean, and how did they come about?
Oh gosh, there was probably some lore about that it's been a minute, but yeah. Well, I would guess that it was like the order of star power in the original company is what I would think it was. Ken Page, I don't know.
Yeah,
I honestly am not sure, but I do know that they were numbered, and it wasn't just some random. And strangely, it was the guys were first. Insert Grisabella as number 2, and then the women started with the numbers. And I think their first after Grisabella was probably Jenny Anydots, and then Jelly.
Interesting.
So, yeah,
that's super interesting. I hadn't heard that, and I'd love to. I'm curious if I can. Does anybody that knows send me a message?
You should track that information down. And that is not Stan Stanley's opinion. That was that was a real thing.
Well, there's always the, like, how does that? Who came up with it? Is there some thought behind it, or is it just somewhat randomized? Because, like, I even go back to, if people have listened to the show from the beginning, my first 10-ish episodes were me going through characters. And I thought, like, I was trying to just go through characters in the order that they showed up on a song. And I realized that was grossly out of order. So it's like, even mine, I'm like, I don't know, I just picked this person first. I thought they were first, and then I realized I was totally off. So there might be less thought put into those numbers than we think.
It could have been, the costumer or the wardrobe, decided that. But there were numbers, and that was who I was friends with at first, strangely.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's, again, a different piece to it. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back for more of The Wrong Cat Died. Okay, I want to fast forward to what are some of the relationships that you feel like you either created or really leaned into on tour once you got through that kind of beginning of, and now you know, hey, here's I'm ready for the dancing. I'm now going to start thinking about, is this my girlfriend, boyfriend, kitten?
I'm going to make this character, I'm going to live in this character more. One of the first big ones that I remember really focusing on was Tugger's relationship with Munkastrap. I think that I had been told that they were probably brothers, but I'm not positive that I was told that. I could have, discerned that myself. The first Munkastrap I worked with, tremendously talented Grant Turner. And around the time, I want to say that this came into, the rehearsal process when we were in our previews in Atlantic City. And strangely, Grant and I were assigned to be suite mates in the hotel that we were staying in. So we got to spend a little more time together. And then I was, told, you guys, your characters are probably brothers. And then I remember one night we were practicing our makeup in the hotel room because we all, we did our own makeup.
Yeah.
And Grant and I realized that our birthdays were one day apart, August 10th and 11th. And at the same time realized that we had, true story, like matching birthmarks on our back, just a little, like a random little birthmark. And so all of that really went to, told me this is a character that you need to invest some time and thought into your relationship on stage. And that's kind of an easy one now that once I knew about it, it's very easy to see. We introduced Deuteronomy. They're kind of two of the, main older gentleman cats in the tribe. It made a lot of sense, but that's the kind of thing that when I was singing through the music, at age 10.
Yeah. You don't get any of those things.
No, I didn't get any of that. And when I saw it in high school, I was so, disappointed that I had stopped at Little Memory that I wasn't getting anything about the Munkastrap Tugger relationship.
Totally.
But that was certainly one that I put a lot of thought into at first. And then as different, on tour, you are going through not always the same actors playing the same part. People have to swing out for illness or something. There might have been, a rather serious injury and someone else was playing the role. And that was always fun for me to play with, especially once I felt very confident in Tugger. Then when a new actor was Munkastrap, I felt very confident in kind of leading the way for, what is the relationship with them. Of course, it's fun to hear someone else's take on it too. But I was kind of especially the second year I was on tour, a little bit of an elder statesman of that particular company.
Yeah.
And that was, I know I got a lot better at that particular role year 2 when some new dancers came in.
What about the Mistoffelees relationship? This one's infamous. And
yeah.
How did you think about it?
I think that it's, we always shared a dressing room. My first Mistoffelees, we were roommates together at the beginning of the tour. Well, put together as roommates at the beginning of the tour, and then chose to stay roommates throughout. I was listening to his episode earlier today, preparing for this, and he and I dated, personally, for the whole year that we were on tour, which was wonderful to have a companion on tip because. Despite the fact that you're around, a company of 50 technicians and actors, orchestra traveling around, sometimes it can get a little isolating and lonely because you're never going home. You really don't have days off because we would fly on our days off. So that was a very nice relationship. He and I are still really good friends. But so which came first? Did I invest in the character Mistoffelees because of the actor? But I think from just simply the characters, I think Tugger is very confident in his abilities to, be a ladies' man and, tomcat about town. And he knows he's, good looking. He knows he's kind of sexy. He knows he's funny. And he's kind of bored with a lot of other characters, I think. But Mistoffelees he's magical. His costume lights up. He flies in from the rafters. He can make explosions happen on chaise, and in the end, he is able to, bring Deuteronomy back. And so I think I think that it takes that type of character to really impress Tugger. And so that explains why he would be so into Mistoffelees.
Yeah, I think it's fun for me because there's it's such a lore of, are they together? Are they not? Are they best friends? Are they actually dating? And then to hear you guys dated off stage, what makes adds to it. It's just kind of like a piece of that puzzle. So everyone who argues on that behalf, here's more fuel to that fire.
Yeah. Also, I think both as a character, Tugger, and as an actor, Stan, as primarily a singer, I was always, I think I mentioned earlier that the best dancers always caught my eye. I just thought that is something. And sometimes they would say, oh, I would give anything to be able to sing like you. But I knew that I would love to be able to do those turns in second. I mean, I've never been able to do that. So anyone that could, draw my attention like that as the actor Stan and as the character Tugger, I think, we were naturally attracted to that type of talent.
Yeah, that's so fun. I want to hear some stories from the road because I want to start with Atlantic City. Because it seems like, you did 2 full years of this. There's some chaos that goes around. Things don't go right. There's some nuances. So let's start with Atlantic City. But what were some of the memorable moments from your 2 years?
Okay. Well, Atlantic City, I've heard you mention, that it was a little chaotic or that was a lot of craziness. And I don't remember that exactly that way, except just there was a lot going on. I remember we were exhausted from a month of rehearsals, and then we have in New York. Then we come into Atlantic City. That's the first time that we're actually staying in it. It was a nice hotel, but we're staying in a hotel room, and that you have to get used to that. And then I, for some reason, thought, oh, once we get there, we're just going to have time off. We're going to be able to go out to eat and go to the beach. No. We had rehearsals every day. And or fight rehearsals or flight rehearsals or whatever rehearsals there may be, that they were experimenting with new ways to take the orchestrations, new ways to present that. We had a lot of rehearsals with that system before we went out, actually on tour. So I remember that as being a very fun time, but I don't remember it being that chaotic. But it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Then we go on tour, and my biggest memory of the first several months of actually being on the road was that we played Nashville, I think October, November of that year, so fairly early on in the tour. And I had just moved from Nashville in March. So when I came back, this was a tremendous first big role for me, and it happened, I think, because of good timing, the age I was, it happened very quickly. And so there was a lot of hype around me coming back to Nashville, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit. I remember getting up at 4 a.m. and being whisked off in a limousine to go do the talk shows and go to the radio and then go sing with this band. And they had given us a certain amount of media training, and I thought it was very fun, but I also was still just very much getting used to playing that character, which a couple months prior had been a little bit overwhelming for me. So add that to the big hometown crowd and, being doing all the advertisements, and it was a little overwhelming. And then one of the performances in Nashville, Grisabella hits the high note, she gets chosen, and the tire floats up, and then the heavenly wagon floats down, and that didn't work in one of the performances in Nashville. So I had a house full at Tennessee Performing Arts Center of, the hometown crowd, and there was a major technical kerfluffle, as it were, in the show. And I remember that kind of throwing me for a loop a little bit. It was very nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're essentially the face of the show at that point in town. And
in that particular city, I was, yeah.
Yeah,
that's a great problem to have. I'm really not complaining, but that is an early memory that really stands out. Then we shipped it to the West Coast, I think. We were in California on 9/11, and that really changed, one, how we traveled. I don't think we changed the schedule of the show because we were scheduled to be on the West Coast, Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, for a couple months there. And so, but rather than fly, we bussed, which, was fine. It was all, it was relatively local. And I remember pretty sure the first time we flew after September 11th, we flew out of San Francisco. And someone mentioned on a previous episode, but we were always flagged for lots of extra searches because it was such a large group, and we were flying one way. And so the airport days were hardly a day off. It was very, very taxing.
Yeah. I want to hear a little bit about when you switched between, not you switched, but like between year 1 and 2, you have you definitely have some turnover at that point because you have it's usually a 1-year contract, and you get a lot of people that do multiple years, but you get a bunch of new cats to work with. So
yes,
when you how much of the relationships that you played with year 1 cats did you try to bring into year 2, or how much did you try to create as new with the new performers?
Well, I remember we tacked year 2. I don't even sure. No, I think we stopped performing for a couple of weeks, but we did the new rehearsal process, or combined the casts in Biloxi, Mississippi, again with an abbreviated version of the show. And I remember really loving that process because I had gotten my, Tugger legs under me, so to speak.
Yeah.
I knew that I was, I was been told that I was doing really well. We would get reviews and things were going well. But it's a tiring, touring is very tiring. And this was like new energy all of a sudden coming in. And so I really enjoyed it. I know some of the other carryovers from year 1, some of them maybe wanted things to be exactly like it was the first year. But I've always been someone that kind of enjoys that type of that climate of change. Just personally. So I remember just being kind of enriched by this new energy. And I don't really remember trying to thrust upon any of the new cast old relationships, unless it's something that is, dictated by the piece itself.
Yeah.
Which they're like the Tugger, Mistoffelees pairing.
Yeah.
There has to be some relationship there, or it just makes no sense. But then, of course, when your boyfriend leaves and you have someone else in that you do not know, and Ryan Jackson and I grew to be dear friends, and we are still friends today. That was my second, the Mistoffelees year 2. But I was tried to be careful not to force anything that wasn't already there. So at first, I'm just making sure my vocals are solid for his, big number. And then eventually we got to be, very, very good friends.
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of an interesting piece because it is, you have almost, I would say, a rhythm at that point, like at the end of the year, because it's still new, it's theater, it changes every day, but you've got the most part, and you're improving a little bit as you need to go, but then you almost start fresh.
You do.
It's the same show, but it's not, because it's all new people, and it's not like a swing coming on for a day or two, which gives you kind of a refreshing, but it's a whole new group that's going to do it slightly different. And I'm sure they make some tweaks between year 1 and 2 as well.
A little bit. I remember I now know that with different iterations of the show, like I mentioned with the video, the 98 big video, and Tucker is a much more dance heavy track than any of the production. Well, the revival, he had a big dance track too, but the original choreography, not as much. And that there are tweaks like that. I think that they kind of morph the characters to really show off the each actor's strong suit, I think. So I always, as I said, like that kind of change and dynamic, but there are sometimes, if you're doing it 8 shows a week, I was one that really, really tried hard not to call out of shows. And sometimes it's easier to, if this could go just like those last 3 or 4 shows, this would be so much easier.
Yeah.
And then to be, have a swing come in, which we know now, those are invaluable parts of any company are the swings.
Yeah.
But, and some of the swings ended up being some of my best friends on tour too. But sometimes it was easier just, I wish it was just the same so I don't really have to think about it. But that's not going to be the way it is. So here we go.
Was there any in the 2 years city excluding Nashville, that really stood out? Or was like, oh, this is like either really powerful Cats fans, like this group is like really obsessed with it, or just a fun town to have some time off in? Like, what stood out to you on tour?
I came into Cats at a really great time. Even though it was tour 5, I think it had been off Broadway for a couple years, and this was a big remounting. So where previous tours maybe didn't have the best schedule, our schedule was phenomenal that first year. We played all the first run cities, and would sit down for 2-3 weeks at a time. I remember Chicago being a tremendous city for us, because when you are there, for multiple weeks, that means that you actually do have a true day off, maybe even 2, where you're not traveling, you don't have to pack, you actually can sleep late. Chicago, Los Angeles was a tremendous amount of fun. I think that was not until year 2, though. New Orleans. I grew up traveling a lot. Both my parents were public high school teachers, so we had the summers off. And so we always traveled. I was very lucky to have been able to do that as a kid. And so tour life really suited me in that way. So once the show got up, I felt confident with it. Then we were able to, enjoy Denver or enjoy Miami. Yeah. Canada, I remember Montreal being super fun, because Montreal's, is kind of almost Europe, but not. So that was a lot of fun.
So you mentioned Denver. How's the altitude?
That they had oxygen backstage for us. Who knew?
Yeah.
But I distinctly remember that, and it being a great performing venue. But there were oxygen masks for you backstage that I made use of sometimes. I think by that time, I don't remember where in the calendar that fell, but it was I remember my stamina being strong by that point in the tour, so not having to rely on it. But I thought that's very interesting. They have oxygen for us.
Ready? Yeah, it's needed. Yeah. I just got back from vacation there, and I couldn't walk up the stairs.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine doing 2.5 hours. But
yeah.
Okay, let's do some rapid fire.
Okay.
If you could go on the show tomorrow for any character, forget if it's male, female, just if you just could do one track, you could dance it, you could sing it, who would you want to go on as?
A 2-part answer for that. One is it's been, so many years since I played Tugger, and I still very much identify with the Rum Tum Tugger in a certain way. I would love to have another crack at that. I don't know that my, my body these days, I might could do it, but that would be really, really fun, because I think I know I could bring yet another level to it. With that said, I would love to play Grisabella. I mean, that is the role, man. I mean, you're on stage 13 minutes. You're always in the spotlight. You go to the heavyside layer. That's the role.
Yeah. Cat number 2.
Yeah, cat number 2.
Okay.
It would be fun. I think I have a tremendous respect for the character, and also the actors, 2 actors that I worked with that played the Buster Jones, Gus Growl Tiger track. Such a challenging role there, and I think that would be a lot of fun to play too, because it's a big challenge, that one.
What is your favorite, who are your favorite and least favorite characters from the show? So Cats, let's ignore people.
Yeah, not the actors, characters. And I love their number, but Rumpelteazer just kind of got on my nerves. And it's not the actresses at all, because that takes a tremendous talent too. Probably the most, aerobically in shape singers, dancers there. But Tugger didn't have a lot of time for Rumpelteazer.
Okay.
And favorite, I'm going to say, I really, really liked Muckastrap. I think Tugger was always a little bit jealous of Muckastrap. And that, I don't think, translated to me personally being jealous of the actors that I played opposite. But I think that's a great role. It's kind of pleasantly understated. You're in charge. You're a tremendous dancer, very statuesque on stage. But you could leave the show without knowing what your name was. Yeah. And there's something about that I like. So anyway, Muckastrap.
I love how Tugger answers those were. Those were straight. They influence your opinion so hard.
Yeah.
Favorite song from the show?
I really like Skimbleshanks, the Railway Cat. That was one that I remember from a kid that I really, really loved. And
that was in your book?
Yes, that was in the vocal selections book that I would play on the piano. And then funny story about Skimbleshanks is in high school, I had no business doing this, but a tour of Les Mis came through Nashville and they had open auditions. And so I was a very, good high school actor, singer, but I probably did not have the chops to audition for an adult, second national tour coming to Les Mis. But I went, and what did I sing for Les Mis? But Skimbleshanks, the Railway Cat.
Wow.
Yeah, not sure that was the right choice, but anyway, such is life.
Didn't work out though.
That did not work out that time.
So I love hearing that, because did you literally have Skimbleshanks and Memory back to back in that book? Like, those are two very different paces of songs to play.
Yeah, I remember. So I probably could find that somewhere, but Memory was in it. Skimbleshanks, Up to the Heaviside Layer was in it. The naming of, Deuteronomy's song at the end of the show.
The addressing? Is that the
addressing of the cats? Not the naming of the cats, but the addressing of the cats. That was in it. It was just, I'm not sure how they picked the 8 or 10 songs that was in that book, but those are the ones that I knew first.
Probably whatever they thought was best on piano, right? Like if it's a piano book, but okay. So you said you said that you're a teacher, your parents are teachers. I always ask one fun one. So which cat do you think would be the best teacher, high school teacher?
That's a good question. Jenny Anydots.
So that was my first thought. I love Jelly Alarm as the answer here. I think she'd be a very kind teacher.
She does have the demeanor of a teacher.
Yeah.
I think I was thinking Jenny Anydots, because that would be a very vibrant, teacher.
Yeah.
Some of the high energy. And then she teaches the mice.
Yep. She's got experience.
She's experienced.
Yeah.
Yes, she's experienced.
Okay, most important question. Yeah. So I've argued hundreds of episodes now why I don't think Grisabella's a choice. Do you want to defend Grisabella, or who are you picking as your Jellicle choice?
Okay, so the southern boy in me says there's always a saying in the South, the higher the hair, the closer to God, right? So I thought, for this platform, the higher the belt, the closer to heaven she could be. So I think that's a justification. She's got that big E flat or E natural, whatever it is, in big memory. But after thinking about it, I think, and you've made the argument, but I can't get around that it's a very solid argument, that, Gus should have been the one. He's about to leave us anyway. He needs that, that afterlife. He needs to be reborn again. And so that's who's going to get my vote, is Gus.
So you're going Gus. Okay,
I'm going Gus. Team Gus.
I love it. I do like the idea, the higher the hair, the closer to God. I like that as the higher the belt. But I honestly think that was part of a version of that is how I first started this show, which was it's a competition. It's a performing competition. Who is the most fun? Who's going to get voted on by America or Britain or whoever?
And I love that idea that you brought up about. And I think that could be commercially very viable, actually, is that if there's a way for the audience to decide who's going to, it's a little bit of a gimmick, but
I'm ready.
You got to have a gimmick.
I'm slowly trying to convince anybody to do that. It's not hard. The technology's there. Everyone's got their phone in their pocket.
Yeah.
It would not be difficult to add that layer. Or even if you just had not even an audience, you could do it by cheering. You could you could do a lot of different ways to make it more fun. And it's a little gimmicky, but if you threw this in a regional production or a high school production or someplace else where you've got, you're keeping 99% of the core of the show.
Right.
And then all you're changing is just, you still sing Memory.
Right.
You still have her welcomed back. But when it comes time to when she gets walked up through the crowd, through all the different cats, you pause, and that's where you ask the question. And then, someone else goes up.
Yeah.
And it can be different every night.
Yeah, there's something to that. I think that could extend the life of a regional production of this. Of course, I think, Mr. Lloyd Webber is probably rolling his eyes right about now, but maybe not. I don't know. He's a brilliant businessman. So
I feel like he's open to a lot of stuff. I mean, he's definitely taken some risks in the show. They've made changes. They did some stuff that's not worked. They've made some other changes that have been really smart. They made some that some fans hate, some fans love. You know, they've definitely moved throughout the 40 plus years. So I don't think it's out of the realm, but it is definitely more changed than like making Tugger hip hop or contemporary than some of the other ones, you know, or moving the Growl Tiger, you know, differently because of, you know, some of the insensitivities there. So I don't think like, I don't know. I'm hopeful. I also love the idea of it being a tour because can you imagine your friends and family in Nashville?
Yes.
Like, you're going up that whole week.
Yes. Every night that week.
I think that adds such a fun layer too for the performers of like, it kind of keeps you on your toes. But to your point earlier of like, some days you just really wish for please just be the same. Like,
let's just get
like this, that would never be the same if you did it that way.
Yeah.
That is, that's fun. Okay. So I've got another Gus vote that always makes me happy.
Yeah.
I love kind of asking this question now. Let's take Grisabella and Gus off the table.
Okay.
Let's say it's next year. They like, let's pretend that they're out. Who's going after them? Who's the first choice after those two?
I mean, I got to throw my hat in there for Tugger. Honestly.
Tugger's time. Okay.
I mean, he's probably been a little too mischievous beyond, you know, his years, and he's gonna wear out his welcome maybe a little bit. I think he could get a vote. There's also something about, even though I think the Cassandra is kind of like, you know, she's going to be there forever. There's just such a mysterious like element to her. I don't think she really needs it, but somehow I could see Cassandra being the chosen one.
Okay.
So
she does not have many votes. No, I mean, it's,
think she needs them because she's so, you know, she's got her own thing going on, but something about that character I could see being raised to that next level. I don't know.
Yeah. It's pretty much a 2-cat race. It's a Gus Grisabella debate at this point with a few votes here and there for people that are really passionate about, all right, hold on. My cat was ready to go. And I'm like, I don't think anybody else is voting for this except for you defending your cat.
Yeah.
But that makes it fun because for me, any vote that's not Grisabella is fun for me.
You've spoken about like the Cats fans, you know, the like professional Cats fans, and that was a total shocker to me when we got, you know, out on the road. But I would be very interested to hear what they would have to say, you know, how they would answer that question, because I know they would have an opinion.
I've talked to a good amount of them now, and they're pretty split between the Gus Grisabella too. Like there's a very heavy team Gus out there, and then there's some very traditional. Where I've noticed that they have stronger opinions is usually on the choreography between Joanne Lynn and Andy Blankenbuehler, or there's some like adamant that this relationship between this cat should be this way. Like it's usually like little nuances like that, but they're fun. Like they're such a fun fan. They're passionate that they just kind of love the show. And so a lot of times it's like what connected to them either as a kid or like what was that first moment that they like became a fan. And that is usually a thing that they're like, no, don't change that. And that changes per person, which is fun. I think like it's a healthy fandom, and it's a healthy group of like respecting the like nuance of the world that was built. And so it's always been kind of fun to hear the different things. It's fun for me too, because occasionally I will have a very vastly different opinion. And then all of a sudden I'll get like a couple messages being like, well, wait a second, that's wrong. And I'm like,
but you're wrong, man.
Yeah, but is it wrong? Like, there's no documentation on a lot of this stuff here. So there's been a couple times where I'm like, yeah, I probably am wrong here. But I think that's fun. Like, I love adding to the story of these characters that clearly doesn't exist, but could exist if you had another ball or had another, you know, what's the next day look like?
Yes. So I'm curious, is what made you interested in this subject?
So I saw it in 2016. When the revival happened on Broadway. I had just moved to New York. So I lived in New York for maybe a month, I think, at that point. I was living in the theater district, and I had not seen, like, I had grown up, my mom's a music teacher. I grew up playing sports. You can see all the sports behind me for the, you know, when the recording. I didn't grow up going to a lot of theater in Indiana. I went up to like, they have 5 shows a year or something that comes through. But I saw a lot of musicals, but I just saw them. I didn't know, and I hadn't seen a lot of stuff. I hadn't seen like a lot of the classical things that, you know, like what everyone think you need to see. So when I got to New York and realized I could go on a Tuesday after work, and it's just down the street, and it's a $25 lottery
right,
or stuff like that. I'm like, why am I not going to see some of these things? Like, why can't I mix that in with a Rangers game? And like, I've got all of these.
You can.
I have access to the best of the best, like incredible performers doing something live and a feat that I have no ability to do. So I started going to more things, and I saw a preview of Cats because I'd never seen it, didn't know anything about it. A friend kind of got me preview tickets, and I went, and I kind of had like one of those moments of like overwhelmed. What did I watch?
Awesome.
And I had, at that point I was overwhelmed by New York in general. Like just the subway was overwhelming. Like I'm from Indiana. Like I'm not from a small town. Like I'm from Indianapolis. Like it's a normal sized city, but New York is a different beast. Like it's a whole different city to live in. And so I just was like kind of having fun with what is that experience like of a new job, a new city, and then all these other new experiences. And I was sharing some of that back home, and I kind of wrote and made fun of Cats. And I made the joke that I thought it was the X Factor because it was Leona Lewis. And that's what started this. And then I kind of didn't think about the show again until that trailer for the 2019 movie came out. And I made the joke that I thought Grisabelle was the wrong choice. And I said, welcome to my TED Talk. And I kind of posted on social media. And then the network that I'm a part of was like, hey, you should make this into a podcast. We're building out more. And that was the beginning. And I originally said 10 episodes of explaining why each cat leading up to the movie. Did not know that movie was going to be as big of a disaster and like story as it was.
Right.
And I started meeting people who were in the 2016 show. And I started asking them questions of like, here's what I can't fill in the blanks from YouTube. Like what else is like, here's what I read online. How did you think about that? And it's become my favorite part is now I've interviewed 25 plus productions and different cats from all over the world, and did not realize how deep this went. Like, I wasn't the super fans. I wasn't a fan. I just knew about it. And now I've kind of become enthralled with the nuances of that, like all of the different pieces of this. And the fact that like, you mentioned Tucker, is that there's a Spike in the show, and there's like, there's a Gilbert in Japan, and there's this, and there's that. Like, there's so many weird pieces to it in a fun way that I've been almost feeling like I've become a historian here documenting this. And that's what I find interesting and fascinating, and why I love these conversations. And I will keep recording as long as cast members still want to talk to me. And I've got a lot more scheduled. So awesome. People are enjoying it. I hope people continue to enjoy it. And I think what I'll maybe stop, and what I've kind of like my goal is if I can get somebody to do the Edwin Drew style regional production where I can go in and say, all right, let's do a different version, then I feel like I might have accomplished
that was your big accomplishment. Yeah.
But I've got Gus closer to Grisabelle. Grisabelle still has the lead, but right now Gus is closer. And I know that the most recent tours and regional productions are at least actually talking about this, which I don't think was a question people thought about prior to me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, I'm slowly getting there. One day I'm hoping, Mr. Andrew Lloyd Webber gives me a call and says, all right, what are you thinking about here? But he's a little busy right now.
Yeah, he's got a couple things going on still, yeah.
Couple things going on, and but this has been super fun. I appreciate you sharing and telling your story. I've had a blast
for me as well.
Hearing about your Tugger and your time on the road.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. And thanks everyone else for listening to this episode of The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. To follow along, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else to listen to podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads as The Wrong Cat Died, or check our website, thewrongcatdied.com.